Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. I've been listening to Diversity in Comics say for a while now that he's going to start reading old interviews from old comic magazines. You know, interviews with comic pros to show you what things used to be like. He keeps on saying it, but he never actually gets around to it. Now I know he's terribly busy right at the moment and might not have the time to do it, but I thought I'd get the ball rolling today and see if this might prompt him to do it. Now what I'm going to read you is from the Comic Informer. Now, the Comic Informer was a publication. It came out, I think it was 1981 that it came out. And it only lasted for a year if I remember. But when I read this is an advertisement for the Comic Informer. This is what you're looking at on the screen. It's an advertisement that's on the back of some comics. Now, these were independent comics that this was on the back of. I think First Comics was where I saw it mostly. But when I read this, and it talks about what Comic Informer actually is, this to me sounds like a Comicsgate manifesto. This to me sounds like a mission statement for Comicsgate. For me, anyways. Now, before anybody gets their panties in a bunch, no, I'm not saying that this guy and the people who created Comic Informer would be Comicsgate people. I'm saying that this statement here, as to what they were trying to do, to me, sounds very similar to what Comicsgate wants today. And so I'm going to read this over and talk about it for a couple of minutes. So this is what he says. Right at the beginning, it's a statement from Michael Wolfe. Now he's the creator of Comic Informer Enterprises. And he says, we're looking for people who like to read comics. Because they're looking for people to give their input. They're looking for fans who like to read comics to give their input in the Comic Informer. This is what they were looking for. And this is what it says. Today, hundreds of men and women who never thought they'd enjoy reading about comics are finding out that the Comic Informer is a new and interesting voice in the world. They can all thank the dedicated members of a newly formed publishing group, Comic Informer Enterprises, who are devoting their time and talent to making sure that the comic world is a safer place to live in. Some of the people the Comic Informer is out to help. The fledgling comic reader who is looking for what's good in the industry and who doesn't want to waste a shrinking dollar on full-colored garbage. The experienced comic reader interested in exploring new angles to the ways and means of purchasing and enjoying the variety of magazines available. The untapped talent, either in drawing, writing, or both, who is looking for the perfect showplace for their efforts. The magazine reader looking for something fresh and different. A plan to help others. It started almost a year ago when a handful of comic fans got together to put out a different sort of comics magazine. They knew that all over America there were people who were looking for a magazine that would talk about the comics genre in a unique and entertaining manner. It was suggested that a new kind of magazine be established. A publication that would feature articles, reviews, interviews, editorials, and strips, but would present them in a format that would bypass the cynical approach in favor of an approach that would strive to be objective and diverting. An approach which would always reflect the needs of the fans. The magazine would also serve as a place where fan talent, both recognized and, most importantly, unrecognized, would find room for publication and a chance for attention by the general readership. Your experience begins here. To help others discover what it means to be a Comic Informer reader, the creators of the magazine now offer a chance to join the ranks of those who read comics for sheer enjoyment. Simply fill out the coupon below for a copy of the current issue of the Informer. Send now and discover that there's more to reading comics than noticing miscolored panels. Alright, so this is a very short statement. And like I said at the first, to me, this sounds like what Comicsgate is. To me. Maybe not to you. Certainly not to the people on the other side. But this is what I think Comicsgate is. I mean, here they want, it's a movement. It was a magazine. It was a publication started by a handful of comic fans. That's who it was started by. And he's looking for comic fans, people who enjoy reading comics, to contribute to this. And if you've ever read any of the Comic Informers, and you probably haven't, because right now I think the handful of them that are out there, they're probably about $100 a piece right now for a collector. But they had a lot of stuff in them. They had interviews with pros, right? Long interviews. Things that Diversity in Comics wants to read about, right? This is the kind of stuff that he says he's going to read about, and we'll probably get to someday. But it's started by fans. And they want to do this in a way that is, what did he say? He wants to do feature articles, reviews, interviews, editorials, and strips that would bypass the formal, cynical approach and would be objective and diverting. You know, diverting meaning entertaining, funny. So he wants it to be objective. That's what he wants, right? And it's always about the fan, right? That's what he says time and time again here. An approach which would always reflect the needs of fans. That's his approach. And why? Well, he says it again here, just quite simply, because new comic readers don't want to waste a shrinking dollar on garbage. That's what he said. And experienced comic readers want to know the best way to use their purchasing power. These are the kinds of things that we are looking for. This is what Comicsgate is about. This is what we would strive for an industry, to have our voices heard as fans. And not only that, but to recognize the comic genre as unique and really entertaining. That's what we want as well. That's what I want, certainly. I mean, I've been saying in a lot of my videos, certainly the newer ones, saying that, you know, comics are just handout pamphlets now to get you to go see a movie. That's all that they are. They don't have any quality. No, I don't want that. I want you to concentrate on making a good comic. That's what I want. And I don't see that coming out of the big two, certainly. You know, I want you to actually concentrate on comics as a genre and think about that and only that. If you're producing a comic, if you're at Marvel and DC and you're the producers of a comic, produce it for the comic fans. Again, about the fans. That's what it's about. That's what this guy is talking about here. And that's what I think Comicsgate is. That's what we need. Again, I love this statement. I could read it over and over again and always come up with something new. It's a movement started by comic fans. He wants an approach of editorials and interviews and reviews that are focused on the fans in an objective way, not according to some ideology, not according to political correctness, which is part of an ideology. No, in an objective way. Not just noticing miscolored panels either. Not just saying that it's technically not sufficient. No, to actually criticize it in a way that is informative and funny. This is, you know, the main reason why I've been watching, or started to watch Diversity in Comics to begin with. Because that's what he did. You know, he put out reviews that were interesting, objective, and funny. Sometimes they weren't as objective as they might be, but I get no problem with that, because most of the time they were. And watching his channel actually got me back into comics, because I could watch these things and pick out what comics which would be good and which comics would not be good. Because that's why, one of the reasons, certainly why I stopped reading comics so long ago, was because and like this guy has said right here, I didn't want to spend my money on garbage. I was sick and tired of spending my money on garbage. And I couldn't tell. You know, I would flip through a book and go, that looks good, but until I read it, I can't tell whether it's garbage or not. Really. I would say 8 times out of 10, if not 9 times out of 10. You can't tell. But if I can see a review, if it's objective, great. And if it's funny, as he says here, diverting, yeah, then I want to watch a review. And then I want to actually pick up those comics. I think that comic reviews that we put out there, not so much me, I don't do a whole lot of reviews, but other people in Comicsgate, well, they are the reason why plenty of people are still actually holding on to comics and still actually want there to be good comics. Because, yeah, like he says here, an approach which would always reflect the needs of the fans. Again, this was my introduction to Comicsgate. This is how I found it out, because I wanted to watch reviews and other things that were adjacent to the industry about comics, because even after almost 20 years of not buying a comic from the newsstand, from the stand, just buying old stuff, after about 20 years, I still love the genre. I still love comics. I still want to actually buy good comics. I just didn't want to waste my money. And there was no way to actually do as this fella here is saying, as Marv Wolfe is saying here. There was nothing for me to actually sift through the garbage and say this is good and this is not. But then Comicsgate came along, or I came along and found Comicsgate, and that's what I found. I found a publication like is being described right here. It was smattered all over the place. It was created by fans. It was trying to be objective and entertaining. It was trying to make sure that new comic fans didn't waste their money on garbage, and old comic fans knew exactly where to go to get the most money, the most for their money. And it was centered around fans and the needs of fans. And it always took in not just the needs of the fans, but what you had to say as well, your comments. This is, to me, this is what Comicsgate is. This is what Comicsgate should be. If anyone else doesn't see it that way, I think this is what it should be. So anyway, just like I said at the first, I just wanted to do this, see if I can get Richard moving just a little bit, because I actually want to hear what he has to say about those old comic interviews. I really do. Because when you look at something like this, and he is going to look at things like this, we will see that there was an industry at one time that was healthy, and that wanted healthy criticism, and that wanted comics to be great with fan input, by listening to the fans and what they wanted, and what their purchasing power actually meant in what they were buying and what they weren't buying. Really was that simple, and should go back to that to be a healthy industry. Anyways, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about this little statement put out in 1982. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye.